The moment Daniel stepped out of his sleek black Bentley, the world around him froze. He had just parked in front of one of his towering office buildings in downtown Chicago, prepared to meet investors for yet another high-stakes meeting. The city pulsed with its usual chaos: honking horns, polished shoes clicking on pavement, suits brushing past each other in hurried rhythm. But as he turned toward the building's entrance, something shattered his routine. There, sitting on a crumpled blanket just a few feet from the marble steps, was a woman with hollow eyes and 3 small children clinging to her side. Her clothes were worn, her hands trembling as she shielded the kids from the biting wind. Daniel blinked once, twice, and then his chest tightened. That face, it couldn't be. "Elena," he whispered, barely audible, like the name itself was sacred. She didn't look up. But he knew. It was her. The girl he once swore he'd marry when they were only 10 years old, back in the forgotten streets of South Side. But what was she doing here, homeless, with 3 children? And why hadn't she recognized him? He hesitated, a war breaking out in his chest between impulse and disbelief. The Daniel who now stood there was unrecognizable from the scrawny kid who used to share peanut butter sandwiches with Elena on a broken porch swing. He had built empires, tech, real estate, finance, and now stood among the top 30 under 30 millionaires of America. People bowed when he entered a room. But in that moment, nothing about his riches mattered. What mattered was that Elena was here, shivering, as if life had forgotten her name. His mind reeled. Why didn't she reach out? What happened to her? He took a slow step forward. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, voice soft but uncertain. Still, she didn't lift her head. One of the little girls, maybe 7 years old, looked up instead, her eyes wide and dark like Elena's used to be. "Do you have food?" she asked plainly, without fear or shame. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Her voice was so calm, so used to this. Without thinking, he crouched down, reached into his coat pocket, and handed the girl the protein bar he kept for emergencies. "Thank you," she whispered, immediately sharing it with her siblings. Only then did Elena slowly lift her head. Their eyes met. And the moment felt like gravity had flipped. Her face, tired, thinner, older, was still unmistakably hers. And when recognition finally flickered in her eyes, it wasn't joy. It was shame. She pulled her coat tighter, as if hiding not just her body, but her entire story. "Daniel," she breathed. He nodded, unsure whether to smile, cry, or run. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. He reached out to help her, but she flinched. "Don't. Please." The words stabbed him. What had happened to her? Where was her family? The Elena he knew had dreams bigger than the world. She was going to be a writer, travel to Paris, open a bookstore. Now she looked like the world had chewed her up and spit her onto the curb. But why hadn't she told him anything all these years? He wondered. "Let me help you," he said gently. But she shook her head. "I don't need pity. I just need to keep my kids warm tonight." Daniel swallowed hard. This wasn't about pity. It was about a woman he once loved more than anything. A woman who disappeared without a trace 18 years ago. And now here she was, on the edge of survival. "What happened to you, Elena?" he asked, voice breaking. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at her children, then back at him. "The world happened. And I made some choices I can't undo." Daniel stood there, frozen between 2 lives, the one he had built and the one he had left behind. He could feel something shifting inside him. He had to know more. He had to understand. But how much pain was he ready to uncover? Why had Elena vanished from his life without saying goodbye? And what secret was she now trying so hard to hide? Before we dive deeper into this journey, if you enjoy stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. The city lights flickered through his penthouse windows, but his mind was back on the sidewalk where Elena sat huddled with her children. He kept seeing the way her hands trembled, the fear in her eyes when he tried to help. That wasn't the Elena he remembered, bold, brilliant, unafraid to speak her mind. He poured himself a glass of water and stared at the skyline, his reflection barely visible in the dark glass. How could someone so full of promise end up like that? He thought about her kids. The little girl who asked for food had Elena's eyes, but none of her spark. What kind of life had they known so far? He gripped the glass tighter. He had to do something. He wasn't just a millionaire. He was a man with power, with reach, with resources. But he also knew better than to barge into someone's life without invitation. So the next morning, he went back. No security. No fancy suit. Just jeans, a coat, and something heavier than guilt pressing on his chest. She wasn't there. The corner where she had been sitting was empty, just a few crumpled newspaper pages drifting in the breeze. Panic shot through him. Had she been taken? Had someone hurt her? But then he heard a familiar voice, a child's laughter. He turned the corner and saw them in the alley behind a bakery. Elena was helping her children divide a leftover baguette, crouched on the cold pavement. Her back was to him, but he noticed the way her shoulders hunched, tense, guarded, always on edge. He stepped forward carefully, not wanting to frighten her. "You moved," he said softly. She turned, startled at first, but then her expression softened. Didn't want to be in the way. He nodded. "I brought something for the kids." He held up a bag from the local grocery store. Sandwiches, juice boxes, apples, simple, nourishing things. She hesitated. Then, wordlessly, let him place the bag beside them. The children's eyes lit up. "Thank you," the little boy said, barely more than a whisper. Elena looked at Daniel, her gaze heavy. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said. "But I want to." She stared at him for a long moment. "Why?" The question caught him off guard. He could have said it was out of kindness, or guilt, or duty. But the truth went deeper. "Because once, you were my whole world. And I never stopped wondering what happened to you." Her eyes glossed over with unshed tears, but she quickly blinked them away. That was a long time ago. He sat beside her, ignoring the cold ground. Time doesn't erase people. Not really. They sat in silence for a while, watching the kids eat. Then she spoke. "I was 17 when I left. My mom got sick. Real bad. I took a job cleaning motel rooms to pay the bills. I dropped out of school. I lost touch with everyone." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Why didn't you reach out? I would have helped. You were already halfway to success. I didn't want to be the girl who slowed you down." Her words hit him like a punch. All these years, he thought she'd chosen to disappear. But now he saw, she had sacrificed everything for others. Including him. "I would have chosen you," he said, voice low. She smiled, but it was a sad kind of smile. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do." He looked at the kids again. "Are they?" She shook her head before he could finish. "No. Their father left when my youngest was still a baby. Haven't heard from him in years." That truth, raw and simple, made Daniel's heart ache. How had she survived all this? How had she kept going? He didn't ask. He just looked at her, this woman, once a girl with big dreams, now fighting every day just to keep her children fed. And he made a silent promise, "I'm not letting you disappear again." But what would Elena do? If she knew the life he was about to offer her would change everything she believed about herself. Over the next few days, Daniel found himself returning to that alley behind the bakery, like a magnet pulled by something deeper than logic, something like unfinished love. Each time, he brought a little more than just food. Blankets. Shoes for the kids. A prepaid phone. But more than that, he brought presents. He listened. He laughed with the children. He asked questions gently, never prying too much, just enough to remind Elena that someone still saw her. Slowly, her guard began to crack. One morning, as snow began to dust the edges of the city, she looked up at him and said, "They think you're Santa Claus." He chuckled. "Well, I don't have a beard." She smiled, and it was the first real smile he had seen since that day on the sidewalk. "You always knew how to make people feel safe," she said. That sentence hung in the air like a secret. Daniel felt something stir, not nostalgia, but something more urgent. More real. He wanted to fix this. Not out of guilt, but out of something like love. But how could he do that without making her feel owned? The next day, he asked the impossible. Come with me. You and the kids. Just for a week. Somewhere warm. I have a place in Santa Barbara. You'll have your own rooms, privacy. No pressure. Just rest. You need it. Her eyes narrowed. You want to take a homeless woman and her children to a beach house? He nodded. Exactly. She shook her head, almost laughing. Daniel, this isn't a fairy tale. People don't just get plucked off the street and into a millionaire's mansion. Why not? He asked seriously. Because it's not real, she said. Because people like me, we don't get saved. We survive. That's it. He paused. Then said, maybe it's not about being saved. Maybe it's about remembering who you were before the world made you forget. She fell silent. He could see the walls behind her eyes trembling. Then softly, and what happens when the week is over? When you realize I'm not the girl from South Side anymore. Daniel looked at her without blinking. Then I'll get to know the woman you are now. And I'll respect her just as much. It took her 3 days to say yes. He arranged everything quietly, privately. A discreet flight, a quiet arrival. When Elena and her children stepped into the Santa Barbara house, their jaws dropped. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, the sun spilling golden light across the hardwood floors. The kids ran toward the backyard, shouting and laughing for the first time without caution. Elena stood frozen, a duffel bag still clutched in her hand. Daniel stepped beside her. You okay? She looked at him, wide-eyed. I haven't been inside a real house in 5 years. He nodded. Take your time. That night, as the children slept in real beds, Daniel cooked a simple dinner. Just pasta and salad. Elena watched him move in the kitchen with quiet curiosity. You cook now? I had to learn, he replied, smiling. Turns out, money doesn't make pasta boil any faster. She laughed, a real deep laugh. And for a moment, they were just two people, two friends, two souls sharing a quiet evening. Later, they sat outside on the patio, wrapped in blankets. The ocean roared in the distance. Why are you doing all this? She asked. Her voice was steady, but her eyes searched him like a test. Because I missed you. Because I care. And because I know what it's like to have everything, and still feel like something's missing. She looked down. You don't owe me anything, Daniel. I'm not doing this because I owe you, he said. I'm doing this because I want to. Because I believe you deserve to see yourself the way I always did. Silence. Then, you're not afraid I'll break your heart again? He looked at her, serious. You never broke it. You just never got the chance to hold it. But could Elena allow herself to believe in a future built on a past she had long buried, or would fear pull her away once again? On the third morning in the Santa Barbara house, Elena woke up to the sound of laughter echoing from the kitchen. She stirred slowly, her body still not used to the softness of a real mattress, and for a fleeting moment, she forgot where she was, in a millionaire's coastal estate, wrapped in ocean breeze and the scent of fresh bread. She padded down the hallway, the warmth of the sun slipping through the windows, casting golden lines across the floor. As she descended the stairs, the scene before her made her heart ache. Daniel sat at the kitchen island with her 3 children, flipping pancakes like he'd done it every morning of his life. Morning, sleepyhead, he greeted with a grin that hadn't changed since they were 10. For a second, it felt like none of the pain had ever happened. No cold nights. No hunger. No shame. Just joy. But then reality crept in like a shadow. Elena forced a smile and sat down, watching her children eat without fear, without shivering, without begging. And that's when guilt wrapped around her like a vice. They're going to get used to this, she thought. And when it's gone, what happens then? She kept her eyes on the syrup dripping down her son's chin, but her heart was already back in that alley behind the bakery. Daniel, as if sensing her thoughts, placed a glass of orange juice in front of her and said, "You're here now. That's what matters." But she couldn't shake it. This wasn't her world. This wasn't real. She wasn't a guest. She was a ghost who'd accidentally walked into someone else's life. Later that afternoon, while the kids napped under fleece blankets, Elena wandered through the house. Every detail felt too perfect, like a museum curated by someone who never had to choose between rent and groceries. Family photos hung on the walls, but none with Daniel in them. "You live alone?" she asked as he passed her in the hallway. He nodded. "I tried the whole engagement thing once. Didn't stick." "Why not?" she asked. He shrugged. "She wanted a husband who came home at 5. I was building empires." They ended up on the patio again, the same spot where ocean met horizon. This time, she asked the question she had been avoiding. "Why me?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because you mattered before the money. Before the press. Before I had anything worth losing." She looked away. "But I've changed. I'm not the same girl who wrote poems and dreamed of Paris." He turned toward her. "Good. That girl was brave. But this woman? She's a warrior." Her eyes welled, but she blinked fast, not wanting to break. "You don't know the things I've done to keep my kids fed," she said. "Things I'm not proud of." Daniel leaned in. "Then you did what mothers do. You survived. You protected. You chose them over pride. That's not shameful, that's heroic." Her lips trembled. No one had ever said that to her. Not even herself. She wrapped her arms around her knees and asked, "But what happens when this week ends? Do we just go back?" He was quiet for a beat. "Then, that's up to you. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a door." A long silence followed. The sun dipped lower, the sky bleeding into oranges and purples. Then softly she asked, "And what if I'm too afraid to walk through it?" He didn't look away. "Then I'll sit here. Right on this side of the door. Until you're ready." Her breath caught. No one had ever waited for her before. Not really. Not without conditions. She looked at him then, not the millionaire, not the polished man in magazines, but the boy who once helped her carry her backpack when the strap broke, who cried with her when her dog died. And something inside her shifted. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do this alone anymore. But was Elena truly ready to build a new life? Or would the fear of failing again keep her trapped in survival mode forever? By the 5th day, the children had fully embraced the house like it had always been theirs. They chased each other through the halls, built pillow forts in the guest bedrooms, and squealed as they dipped their toes into the chilly ocean waves at sunset. Daniel watched them with quiet admiration, but his eyes always returned to Elena. She was changing. Not in a dramatic movie scene way, but in the small, beautiful details. She stood taller. She laughed more. Her eyes didn't scan every room for danger anymore. And that morning, for the first time, she sat by the window with a book in her hands. Not reading instructions, not filling out forms. A novel. Fiction. Escape. Hope. He brought her coffee and sat across from her. "I remember you used to write," he said. She smiled faintly. "I still do. Sometimes. In my head." "Why not on paper?" "Because paper feels permanent. And my life hasn't been." His chest tightened. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that permanence could start now. But he held it back. She had to choose that herself. Later that afternoon, Daniel took the kids into town for ice cream to give Elena some time alone. She used it to wander the house. Not out of curiosity, but because she was trying to understand it. The artwork on the walls, the scent of lemon in the air, the clean white bedding. It was all so different from the shelters, from the nights in train stations, from the months spent invisible. She found herself in his study. On the desk were neatly arranged folders, a laptop, a photo of a woman she didn't recognize, blonde, elegant, with cold eyes. "She was your fiancée?" she asked when he returned. He nodded. It looked perfect on paper. But perfect isn't always right. Elena traced the edges of the photo frame. She looked expensive. Daniel laughed. She was. In every way. He paused. But not rich in the ways that matter. She looked at him then. "And what matters to you now?" He didn't hesitate. "People who make me feel something real. Who remind me who I was before the suits and the stock prices." That night, after the children went to sleep, Daniel invited her for a walk along the beach. The moon was full, the sand cool under their feet. "I don't know if I can fit into your world," she said. "It's not about fitting," he replied. "It's about building something new together." She looked up at him, skeptical. "You say that now, But what happens when I embarrass you in front of your friends? When people ask who I am and I have to say, just a woman who used to sleep under a bridge? Daniel stopped walking. Then I'll say, she's the woman I loved when I had nothing, and the one I respect even more now. Her breath hitched. No one had ever described her with that kind of dignity. Why me, Daniel? Why still me? Because you never stopped being enough, he said. Even when the world made you believe otherwise. The waves roared behind them, wild and constant. Elena stared out at the water. What if I fail again? What if I can't hold it together? Daniel stepped closer. Then we fall together. We rebuild together. You won't be alone this time. She turned toward him, emotions clashing behind her eyes. Doubt, longing, fear, hope. Then she asked, "Do you mean it? All of it?" He nodded. Every word. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Then I want to try. Not just for the kids. For me." In that moment, something broke inside her, not in pain, but in release. The dam of survival cracked, and in its place flowed something she hadn't felt in years: trust. But just as she opened her heart to a future she never imagined, an unexpected letter arrived, one that threatened to tear it all apart. The envelope arrived on the 6th day, slipped under the front door, unmarked, thin, silent as a shadow. Daniel noticed it first. At first glance, it looked like a routine piece of mail, but something about it made him pause. No return address. No stamp. Just Elena's name written in black ink. Carefully, he picked it up and brought it inside, handing it to her without a word. Elena stared at it for a long time before opening it, her fingers trembling as if already bracing for impact. When she unfolded the single sheet of paper, her face went pale. Her breath caught. And then, silence. Daniel leaned forward, worry etched into every line of his face. "What is it?" She didn't look at him. She just whispered, "He found me." Her voice cracked. "The father of my kids." Daniel froze. In all their hours of talking, she had never told him his name. Never described him. Only said he left. Abandoned. Disappeared. But now, he wasn't gone. And he had sent a message. What does he want? Daniel asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Elena's eyes were wide, her lips barely moving. He said he's coming. That he wants to see them. That he knows where I am now. Her hands gripped the paper so tight it tore in the middle. He said, "It's time to talk about what you owe me." Daniel's chest burned. What she owes him. After everything? But he stayed quiet. This wasn't about him. Not yet. They sat in silence for a long time. The sound of the waves felt farther away now, like the piece they'd built was slipping out to sea. "You don't have to face him alone," Daniel finally said. Elena looked at him, her face hardening. "You don't understand. He's not just a mistake from my past. He's a threat. He's the reason I ended up on the street. He stole from me. He lied. And when I stood up to him, he made sure I lost everything. My job. My name. My safety." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then we'll protect you. We'll call the police. Get a lawyer. He can't touch you now." But Elena shook her head. "It's not that simple. He's careful. He knows how to twist things, make it look like I'm the one hiding something. And if he shows up here, the kids," her voice broke before she could finish. Daniel stood. "Then we'll leave. Go somewhere else. Somewhere safe." But Elena didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the torn letter. She looked like someone who had just been dragged back into a nightmare she'd fought for years to forget. "You said you wanted to help me," she whispered. "Well, this is what helping me looks like. It's not just dinners and beach walks and soft beds. It's this. The mess. The danger. The baggage." Daniel stepped closer. "Then let me carry it with you." Her eyes filled with tears, not from weakness, but from years of carrying everything alone. She folded the letter and placed it on the table like it was made of glass. "I'm scared, Daniel. Not just of him, but of what this could do to them. To us." He knelt beside her, his voice soft. "We'll protect the kids. We'll protect you. I don't care what he thinks he's owed. You don't owe him your fear." Elena nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed on the window. The ocean was calm again. But storms could come back without warning. "What if he takes this all away?" she asked. Daniel didn't blink. "Then we fight. Together." She closed her eyes, breathing in deeply like she hadn't done in years. Maybe this was the moment she'd always been running from, not the man, but the choice to stop running. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone. But as they prepared for the confrontation ahead, one of the children overheard everything, and made a decision that would change all their lives forever. It was Ava, the oldest at 10, who had pressed her small ear to the door that night. She hadn't meant to spy, just wanted to know why her mom's voice had sounded so different, so scared. She didn't understand every word, but she understood enough. A man was coming. A man who made her mom cry. A man who said she owed him something. And for Ava, who had spent nights on sidewalks and eaten dinners from trash bins, who had seen her mother sacrifice everything just to keep them safe, one thing became crystal clear: she would not let that man ruin this new life. So while the house slept, Ava wrote a letter of her own. Just a few simple words in careful handwriting: "Please don't come. We're happy now. Please let her go." And with her tiny fingers and determined heart, she slipped it into the outgoing mailbox down the road before sunrise. They never heard from him again. Days passed. Weeks. Then months. No knock at the door. No legal notice. No threats. At first, Daniel hired security, doubled legal protection, installed alarms. But eventually, even that faded into the background. The storm that had once loomed so heavily on the horizon simply never came. And though no one could ever be certain why, Elena had a feeling. One day, she found Ava on the porch, legs crossed, sketching in a notebook. She sat beside her daughter, gently brushing a curl from her face. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. Ava nodded. "That night, when you heard us talking, did you do something?" Ava didn't answer with words. She just reached into her backpack and pulled out the carbon copy of her note. "I didn't want him to make you sad again, Mommy," she whispered. Elena's throat tightened. Tears welled. But she didn't cry out of pain. This time, it was something closer to awe. That letter, written by a child with no power, no money, no voice in the adult world, had somehow changed everything. From then on, something inside Elena shifted. She no longer walked around the mansion like a guest, waiting to be asked to leave. She stood taller, laughed louder, danced with her kids in the kitchen, and took the lead in business meetings with Daniel. Not as a charity case. Not as the woman he rescued. But as his equal. His partner. One night, sitting on the same beach where they'd first reconnected, Daniel turned to her and said, "I spent years chasing the idea of love, but you showed me what it really looks like. Fierce. Brave. Messy. Beautiful." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you showed me what safety feels like. Not in walls or money, but in being seen." Eventually, Daniel changed the name of his company to Avalen Resorts, a blend of Ava and Elena, to remind them both that his success had truly begun the moment he stopped trying to forget his past and finally embraced it. The kids grew up in a home filled with music, second chances, and Sunday pancakes. And though the scars of their old life never disappeared completely, they became reminders of how far they'd come. Of what they survived. Of what they rebuilt, together. Because sometimes, love doesn't come as a fairy tale. Sometimes it walks back into your life, in a hoodie with 3 kids, and a past too heavy to carry alone. And if you're lucky enough to see the truth through all the noise, you'll realize, the greatest riches in life aren't found in banks or mansions, but in forgiveness, courage, and the family you choose to fight for. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video and tell us in the comments, what part of this journey moved you the most? There's another story waiting for you, and it might just change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon.